Zappa is by far the most unique top tier in Guilty Gear Plus R. Zappa's unique characteristics are derived from his core mechanic of summons. By inputting 236p, or randomly when getting hit, Zappa will summon one of 3 spirits. These spirits are most of the time randomly selected and heavily change the way the character is played, though sometimes, depending on the round timer, you can manipulate which spirit you get. The 3 spirits summoned this way are referred to as Dog, Triplets, and Sword. When he is without a summon, he is commonly referred to as being naked. But he has another stance that he'll enter once he has obtained 8 orbs, then inputs 236p. He'll enter a stance called Row. This gives him access to some of the best moves in the game, and this can serve as a solid reward for successfully controlling a round for long enough. But while the stance is very strong, he's very capable of closing out a round without ever even reaching this stance. Each stance has its own pros and cons. On paper, Zappa is easily the best character in the game, being able to switch in between a variety of game plans like zoning, pressure, mix-ups, and evasion. But in reality, you can only do so much. As a player, you need to know what your stance does, its strengths and weaknesses in each situation, while also knowing if you get hit, you're going to lose your current stance and have to re-roll for another. This can be very mentally taxing, as you'll have to constantly be adjusting your game plan, so let's break down each stance. But before we do that, I just want to give a quick shout out to my Discord server. We have a book club, net play rolls, and various fighting game channels to discuss a whole bunch of stuff. If you like fighting game content or just like these videos in general, make sure to like and subscribe. It helps out the channel a ton. Alright, let's get back to Zappa. When in the naked stance, you'd think Zappa would be a weak character, but that's not necessarily the case. He's extremely slippery. He has an amazing backdash and a fast low-profile dash that allows him to avoid a good amount of moves, as well as having a ton of mix-ups like 214D, which comes out in 16 frames, and 6H while it's unsafe on block. It can be used sparingly to catch opponents off guard. Some of his other stances keep these moves and become much more threatening. He also has a fair share of normals that shrink his hurt box, allowing him to low profile a lot of moves, and his 5k actually raises his hurt box, allowing him to go over lows. This results in him being very difficult to hit with pokes. While also in this stance, he has a 3 in 8 chance of getting a summon whenever he leaves hit stun, and if he rolls Dog, it can easily shift the momentum into his favor. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. 2H is an absurd move because for some reason it has 2x stun modifier, and on air counter hit has the ability to combo into itself, resulting in a super easy stun on your opponent in a lot of situations. One great thing about the naked stance is when you use 236p to summon a stance, it also acts as an incredible DP. It's easily the most important tool in this stance, as it is fully invincible until past startup, removes OTG, knocks down, and grants Zappa a summon. The primary goal of this stance is to find a good opportunity to use this move, whether it be as a combo ender or as a reversal. There are some weaknesses to the stance. He doesn't have incredible damage, any sort of hit will typically just be used to combo into a summon. He lacks decent air-to-air or jump-in tools, and he lacks a decent anti-air, so he is pretty susceptible to air approaches. So let's talk about the next stance. Once in the dog stance, Zappa summons a shadow-like dog to assist him. This results in Zappa turning into a puppet character, similar to Eddie, where he can work in tandem with the dog to create some suffocating pressure. This replaces all of Zappa's dust normals with ways to control the dog. The biggest thing is the dog can attack at all times. It doesn't matter if Zappa is blocking, stunned, or in the middle of a burst. This can make it incredibly hard to open up Zappa while he's in this stance. The scariest thing about this stance is when the opponent is blocking, if Zappa manages to get you in the corner or sandwich you in between him and the dog, you'll be flooded with pressure resets, high-low mix-ups, left-right mix-ups, or just getting grabbed. It is one of the hardest things to get out of in this entire game. If Zappa inputs 4DD, this will result in the dog performing an overhead attack that can be paired with something like 2K, a low from Zappa, to create an unblockable attack. If positioned right, Zappa has an infinite in this stance as well. Assuming the opponent is sandwiched in between the dog and Zappa, he can use a combo that can go on forever until the Zappa decides to reset or the opponent uses their burst. The dog can be hit though, so if you can time a move to hit the dog, you can force Zappa out of this stance. But unfortunately, the dog is only vulnerable when attacking or after it's been idle for 6 seconds straight. If it isn't, you can't hit it. But as you might have noticed, the weaknesses of the stance is that it's very dependent on the position of the dog to get the most power out of this stance. But also, it is very difficult to knock down the opponent since Zappa loses access to 2D sweep. A knockdown can only be scored if the dog is in the right position. The next summon we'll talk about is Triplets. This summon overrides his slash and heavy slash normals and turns him into a tricky character that has tools to extend pressure and flood the screen with numerous projectiles. Triplet Toss is a very useful projectile that can be thrown at various angles, useful for stuffing approaches and locking down the opponent. Once the projectile hits them, the ghost will linger around the opponent, passively dropping random items every 2 seconds for a total of 6 seconds. One drops immediately on hit, so a ghost will drop a total of 4 items if it goes for the full duration. Subsequent hits will reset this timer and return one of the triplets back to Zappa to use, but to add icing on the cake for this stance, triplet tosses inputted with punch, kick, slash, or heavy slash will grant Zappa 1 orb on hit towards Rao. In the dust version grants 3. This can easily convert into your next summon being Rao. The triplets can be very difficult to deal with in general though, since triplet normal can cancel into themselves and triplet toss having a solid FRC point, this can lead to an almost indefinite pressure in the corner if the Zappa has a good read on the opponent. Though for weaknesses in this stance, the triplets don't do much damage themselves, resulting in not having the best damage output, and sometimes these item drops can actually interrupt your combos or knockdowns. If the Zappa player is too reliant on toss or moves like 2H or JH, he'll be left pretty open as the ghosts take time to return to him, and a lot of the new normals he gets access to extend his hurt box, making him more vulnerable to counter pokes. The final of the 3 standard summons is Sword. This stance also overrides his slash and heavy slash normals and gives him a floating sword that will move further away from Zappa with each use. This combined with sword moves having solid mix-up potential results in Zappa being able to run a devastating mix-up game plan that is completely disjointed and can be done from almost full screen. The sword itself has no hurt box whatsoever. This can completely invalidate some opponents' defensive plans. Sword just has an absolute plethora of tools like quick anti-airs, ways to extend pressure, and the ability to recall Sword whenever. Every Sword special has a FRC point that makes it safe, that allows Zappa to extend pressure or combos. Some notable normals are his 6P to 2K Gatling, 6H, which is a 13 frame overhead that hits low later in the move, 2S, a long-ranged low, and Jump S, which can be used as an instant overhead. These moves combined with half circle back forward, heavy slash, causing a knockdown, makes his stance the scariest in the corner. It is very easy for Zappa to score a knockdown off using this move as an ender, and will really make the opponent have a hard time escaping. But as with every stance, it isn't without weaknesses. If the opponent can find a gap and get in between Zappa and Sword, Zappa will be very vulnerable. Lots of Sword normals are very long moves, resulting in big gaps. Outside of the corner, his knockdowns aren't as strong since the Sword causes a lot of space to be generated between him and the opponent, meaning 2D can't be used as much for a knockdown ender. Sword normals also don't build the opponent's guard bar, and most moves are air blockable, where most other grounded moves in this game are air unblockable unless they are blocked using faultless defense. The final stance we need to cover is Rao. Once Zappa collects 8 orbs gained by connecting various moves, his next summon he gets through inputting 236P will be Rao. This stance replaces Zappa's slash and heavy slash moves as well as his 5D. Rao is an absolute powerhouse and can easily close out the round in a single opening. If you have 50% meter and you use 214S as a starter, Zappa can easily close an entire health bar's worth of damage. Even outside of this, he does amazing damage, and if you have already gained 8 orbs, it's probably far enough in the round that one opening will be able to easily seal the round. Rao gives Zappa a bunch of normals that are very useful pokes. They can be used as frame trap and pressure tools. 214S is one of the most powerful invincibles in the game, reaching almost to the top of the screen with an air unblockable hitbox. 236S is an amazing projectile that can be used for combos, Oki, or pressure. The move deals amazing hit stun, while it's plus on block, untechable on air hit, deals 4 times chip damage, and leads to huge damage on hit. If you block this, or the super version, the opponent will have to choose to prevent that damage by spending all of their meter, or they're just going to end up eating a ton of chip damage. With Rao being a late game summon, it's common for this chip damage just to be fatal. While Rao is definitely an absolute menace of a stance, he does have some weaknesses. 5D is your only grounded overhead, making your mix-up game pretty weak. Rao normals have much larger hurt boxes, making it very easy to hit Zappa, and most importantly, after 15 seconds, Rao will just automatically be unsummoned, just leaving Zappa back in his naked stance. And this covers everything this character can basically do. I know it's a lot. This video script ended up being super dense, and I hope I was able to simplify it enough to be digestible and at least very informative. Zappa is a wild character with a even wilder shifting game plan. He's very difficult to master as each stance is just so wildly different. And it really asks a lot of the player piloting him. But if you do dedicate your time to this character, he will reward you with an insanely powerful toolkit. And he really has answers to most situations in this game. Let me know what your thoughts are on this video in the comment section down below. And as always, keep playing fighting games and have a good rest of your day.